Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gamers Gambit, the show where a bunch of us nerdy-ass YouTubers sit around and talk about all things gaming. I'm Don Hayes, and joining us for our discussion today is the one and only friend and co-host Killjoy, and Greg from Egregious Gaming. How's it going, gentlemen?
Great, yeah. It's Egregious Games, by the way. Slight difference.
Fair enough. I'll for those of you who want to check out those channels, they do have their own YouTube channels. I'll be putting the link in the description below, so feel free to check them out. Killjoy runs the engineering bay, and Greg from Egregious Games.
Yeah, and I thought, why not start things off with being the resident bad boy?
Shitty.
The resident bad boy Killjoy is here.
Have sub co-host Dende, who's presently fucking off.
Yeah, he's not interested.
There he goes.
He's not happy, is he?
He's gone.
So yeah, going to bed.
So what are we talking about today? We're talking about a bit of Doom. Bring in the Doom. We'll take these off. I can't see. So we kind of discussion has come up recently about Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, and basically me and Greg were going back and forth on which one we preferred, and then it kind of escalated, and then obviously you may have seen that me and Jack played or did a backseat gaming of him playing Doom 2016 because he'd never played it, and all came together, and we decided, hey, why not let's just do a big discussion on Doom 2016 kind of versus Doom Eternal, but pros and cons of each, and why we might prefer certain systems in one to the other, and all that good stuff. So
to clarify, by escalated, you mean we're basically the opposite ends of the opinion spectrum.
Yeah. I let's just get this out of the way, right? I don't think anyone here hates either games. I think we all three of us enjoy both games, but I think there are design choices, or if you want to say Doom Eternal's improvements, however you want to look at it, however you want to look at it, it's basically like, hey, look, this is why we think this works, this is why we don't think this works, and we're going to go over that. I split it down into combat, movement, and level design. Obviously, there are other things we can cover, but I thought, rather than go into every single nitty-gritty, because there are a lot of changes from Doom Eternal, and some of them aren't that major, but I think the combat and obviously the movement controls and the level design are the three biggest areas, but there are other things in those games. Like I said before, I genuinely love both games. I think both games are fantastic, and just to make people aware, I played the Switch version of both of these, which means I played the worst version of both these games, running at 30 frames, but I did have gyro controls, and I definitely appreciated that, especially for long-range aiming, and they run fantastically on the Switch, but they are lower resolution and lower frame rate. So yeah, and these guys, I believe, both played on PC, so they've had the higher quality experience of it. So, without further ado then, why don't we just get an overall feel of how you feel about both games? Don't go into super nitty gritty, but we'll start with you, Greg. Thoughts on Doom 2016, how you feel about it, and Doom Eternal, and then we'll go to you, Jack, afterwards.
Yeah. Sure. Doom 2016, to start off, I'm not a big FPS guy. I don't love modern FPSs that much. Doom got me. The FPS I loved the most, possibly in ever. It's just such a fun game. It's obviously the response to what FPSs had become with Call of Duty, a lot of cover shooters, regenerating health, a lot of just hiding. Doom was like, fuck all that. No, just give all your weapons. No holding left trigger to aim. None of that. Just you are moving fast all the time. You're running around a maze. You've got loads of weapons. Demons are coming at you. It's non-stop frantic action, and I loved it. And I love the levels. I love all the little secrets. So you want to tell me to talk about Eternal as well?
Yeah, just give your overview thoughts on it as well. Sure. Now we'll go into the nitty-gritty afterwards.
Yeah. So Eternal, a lot of people are going to find this, the opposite, and that's fine. Eternal was a little bit of a letdown for me in some ways. I feel like a lot of the design philosophies were almost like a different designer had done them from Eternal, even though it's the same guy. I don't think the game isn't great. I think it's a great game. It's just somewhat disappointing compared to the first game. And obviously, I'll go into why in great detail later.
And then I guess Jack, I mean, you actually played them in reverse, so it's a different experience for you. But like, yeah,
Yes.
give us your thoughts on both games.
So starting with Doom 2016, I actually really enjoyed the game. I found certain aspects a little bit frustrating in terms of having to get key cards all the time, and the sort of store, like the kind of puzzle aspects of it. It was just hard to figure out where to go in some cases. But the game itself is just a fast, action-packed game. It's just killing demons. One of the most well-optimized games, I would say. More so Doom Eternal than Doom 2016. I did have a couple of issues, but I'm sure I'll outline them later on. But honestly, really good game. Fast, action-packed FPS. Graphics were amazing. Story was awesome. Just really good. And by the way, the sounds... Like the sound design in that game is absolutely incredible. Like when you hear like the demons with that like demonic voice, just like chills down to the back of the spine, man. It's so good. Doom Eternal, I really enjoyed the introduction of dashes. That was probably my biggest kind of like, oh, that's so cool. Like as I said, I kind of played them in reverse. So I played with dashing and then played without. And realized I missed dashing so much when I was playing Doom 2016. But again, just a really well-optimized game. Ridiculous, just mad levels of craziness. I actually preferred the bosses, I think, in Doom Eternal to Doom 2016. And some of the, I guess, demons. But again, I'm sure we'll come on to that later on. But overall, yeah, absolutely both cracking games. If you haven't played them, I highly recommend picking them up.
Yeah, and to give, like I said, like my thoughts. So I played Doom 2016 when it came out on Switch. Was like a year later. So I think it came out in 2017 on Switch. But just the sheer like Greg said, a lot of first-person shooters of recent year have not had that arcadey feel, and this game is like, nah, fuck the story. Like there is a story there, but it's like we don't want to slow you down that much. We want you to basically go from point A to point B, doing these minor objectives, while gradually giving you... Because the one thing I love about Doom, both these games, you start off as a badass and you become more of a badass. It's not like, oh, I'm really weak. It's like, you got a pistol straight away, nah, get rid of that. Get the shotgun, right? We got the shotgun. And every level is giving you new stuff to play with, introducing new demons, and you're learning and getting all these upgrades and things. And you've got this fantastic level design, and the music's fun. If you like metal, it's fantastic. And I was just blown away by how good the game was. And, and one thing that I thought was, I wasn't sure about until I played it was the glory kills, which, is like the ebb and flow of the fights as well. And then last year, Doom Eternal came to Switch, and I played that, and for me, it was like it's like, they turned it up to 11 with Doom, and then suddenly, boof, they turned it up to like 15 with Doom Eternal, and they just added stuff, and it was like, hey, there's more of everything, which again, has its pros and cons. But like Jack said, the dashing, a lot of the grappling, a lot of the platforming in Doom Eternal is so reminiscent of Mario Brothers. It's ridiculous, but it is actually a thing. And that plays to my strength. I love platforming, so monkey bars, stuff like that. So yeah, to me it was like, fantastic game, bonkers game. Like that's kind of how I feel about both of them. But like for me, they are like probably, in recent year, probably the best FPSs that have come out. Like in terms of sheer enjoyment. They literally are what a game should feel like. You should be having fun. It's like, yeah, like pure joy. Like absolutely love them. So you've got our overall thoughts. So I don't know about you guys, but I want to start with the combat. I think that is one of the most important things with both these games. It's like the thing you're doing pretty much the entire time.
That could be most of the podcast, honestly.
Yeah, like I said, I've got stuff about movement and level design, but we'll come to that stuff later. So yeah, like let's talk about the combat, because obviously the game is designed around this ebb and flow of constantly charging forward a lot of the time and moving, and then using a combination of weapons and the tools that you have at your disposal. So yeah, again, Greg, let's start with you. Let's start with like, obviously the combat is slightly different in Eternal, but like, how do you feel about the combat, and like, what do you like about it, basically?
I would say the combat is very different in Eternal, as a consequence of like the different design choices. And I mean, how long do you want me to talk?
I'll tell you what, start with just like the things you like about 2016, and if the things you like about Eternal, We'll do that, and then we can go into things we don't like afterwards. I think that's a good place. And then other things you want to bring to the thing, we'll go that. But just start with the things you like.
Okay. So, as you said, the glory kill design of Doom, it encourages you to move towards the enemies. It's part of this really fun thing. It's rewarding you. A lot of games these days, modern FPSs, they reward you for taking cover, for ducking, for running away. And Doom, I would argue, less so Eternal. Doom just encourages you to get in the enemy's faces, just be up in their faces. I mean, Eternal more obviously puts enemies there that are just there for ammo, and I would argue that Eternal kind of makes you backtrack a bit. In both games, though, there is a kind of maze design. It's you're trying to make your way around this maze and sort of kite enemies. Some of them you can rush towards, other ones you've got to retreat away from. And the fun of the game, for me, is about judging those situations and making a plan. Like, how do you get through this maze and keep killing enemies? And obviously, one of the great things is the thing about regenerating health in games. It encourages you to keep backing off, to keep stopping the action. It's almost like you're pausing the game, which is kind of boring. It was really revolutionary when Halo kind of, I don't think Halo was the first game to do it, but Halo popularized it.
Yeah.
But then we started to see, like in a lot of ways, it was an improvement over the health pack system, because it doesn't mean you've got unwinnable fights. You can always back out. But Doom just came up with something that was more fun, which is you just punch enemies to take their health, more or less. Just a really great idea. It's encouraging you to get really aggressive. It's the game telling you where the fun zone is, to quote the director from Eternal, which I disagreed with his philosophies on Eternal. So the differences in Eternal. Eternal made some very strange choices to me. It put a lot of things on cooldowns. It gave you all these really cool new tools, but it's almost going back to that philosophy of saying you have to wait. And rather than, I feel like Doom 2016 was a toy box, kind of a sandbox of death. Just go and kill the enemies wherever you want. You want to use the shotgun, you want to be a sniper. It's cool. Like, these enemies are like puppets for you to fuck up and just chop and slice. And it was great fun. Everyone could do that. Eternal, in my mind, took a philosophy of there is a correct way to play, and you shall do this, or the game will punish you. You didn't do it right, go back and do it again. And it's not that extreme. It doesn't ruin the game, but it's a very odd change of philosophy. But there are things I really like about it. I love the addition of dashes. I really like the flame belch. What are other things that I loved? Just in general, I think some of the more maze-like arenas are really cool when it doesn't just plop you in a big open space with no cover. I loved all the extra tools, like the grapple on the shotgun. Fantastic, amazing. I love that.
One of the best additions.
It's just, for all the things they added, like Doom 2016 was a perfect formula. You don't really have to, like, that was my expectation going into Eternal, is that Doom 2016 is already perfect. Just make more of the same and you're pretty much going to be great. Obviously, I would like to see more, but all you really have to do is make more of 2016. But while there was more of all the things I love, more enemy types, you can't go wrong with that. Better bosses, bigger arenas, etc. There were some just choices that seemed there for sort of no reason, like I will go into mechanics more detailed later, but for now I'll pass on.
Yeah, no, cool, Jack. So let's chuck to you. Like, so, obviously the combat's different in both games, but there is obviously the core of it there. But like, yeah, what's your like kind of feelings on both of them, and like what you like about it, really?
So one of my favorite things about Doom, outside of the speed and pace of the action, is the weapon swapping mechanic. Is one of the coolest things ever. In Doom 2016, I found a combo with a super shotgun and the ballista, I believe, or it might be called ballista in Eternal. I can't remember what it's
Gauss
called.
cannon or something like that. Yeah.
That's it, Gauss cannon. Man, that combo is just so sick. And when you find that combination, you keep like putting it off every time. It's like, it's just rewarding. when you can like, oh, there's a big boy coming towards you, and then you just take him out in like 2 or 3 shots, like weapon swaps. Like, oh, awesome. I mean, the weapons themselves are really diverse and interesting, and they're just savage, like in every way possible. Like the kills, the glory kills, the fatalities, just mate, it's like Mortal Kombat, just levels of brutality. Which might not be for everyone, but for me, it's just so cool. Just like I say, the game rewards you for being a fucking badass, you know? It's just like, damn, this is so fun and enjoyable, and it's like you never really, there's not many lulls in the game. It's like you go to like almost like an arena fight, and then you go from one arena fight into another arena fight into another one, and each time it gets progressively more difficult, more enemies, more enemy types, using different weapons, you know, like BFG and stuff. And it's just like knowing when to use your resources, and like that whole weapon swapping mechanic of like, oh my god, I'm running low on this ammo type, I need to start switching my weapons. And it's just constantly like making you think, and it's like you never get complacent with the game because the game punishes you so hard if you do. It's just fun. It's like, it's one of those games where there's just no shortage of enemies, and you kind of just want to fight all day, every day, you know? Just let's just go. Just give me demons, give me a portal, and let's just have at them. Obviously, the chainsaw for recovering ammo and health is awesome. It just keeps you in the fight even longer than you would otherwise be. There's a load of different combat mechanics, but the way that you kind of different fatalities depending on your positioning. I think it's the glory kill, isn't it? When you just go up and like you take their arm off and smack them in the face with their own hand and stuff, and it's just cool as hell. The one thing I do like in Doom Eternal that they added was the sword and the blood fist. Oh man, that just added another level of just epicness when you're fighting. There's very little frame drop in that game, or both of them actually. Doom Eternal, I would say more so, is just so well optimized that you're not, even though the pace is insane, like you're not almost punished because it's like it's running so fast. It's just a really great game to behold, honestly. Yeah, it's hard to get bored of it.
Yeah, that's the thing. All right, so
and then you've got the story as well over and above that, which I actually really enjoyed. Being like the first introduction to the Doom series. Yeah,
and I think both games. It's weird because there's obviously some time gap between the first and second one, but their story is kind of fun. So let's talk about the combat then. From my point of view, like 2016, like you said, the weapon switching and the chainsaw. You know, you've got everything, and obviously the glory kills. So the game is this. It's like you need to constantly think about what you're doing. You need to analyze what the biggest threats are in the fights. Is it the big brutes? Do you need to kill off the little guys quickly if they're like the imps? You know, whatever the enemy types are, you know, cacodemons, whatever. Like that's the nice thing about the weapons. You're like, oh, that guy's quite far away, or I'll use the ballista or the Gauss cannon, or like someone's up close, or I'll use the pulse gun. Oh, but they use the same ammo type, so maybe I'll use the shotgun. On top of that, something we haven't even mentioned is the weapon mods that you get for the guns, and that is something that extends each gun massively. Like the standard shotgun, pretty fun, and then you then have the ability to add a sticky bomb on or rapid fire, and that completely changed. Suddenly your shotgun is now a machine gun, and on top of that level of things, you can then upgrade them further. Doom Eternal does this as well. You could get each one has 2 weapon mods, except for I believe the super shotgun and the BFG, and that's because it's a super weapon. But every gun has, you know, like the rocket launcher has a lock-on ability, and it has a detonation ability, and then you can upgrade those and give it and make it even more ridiculous. That's what's so fun. Is like you've got the standard gun, like the rocket launcher is great, but let's make it even crazier. The machine gun had a bit of a change between the two games. It was a scope, and then in Eternal it became like an actual sniper shot. So you have all this craziness in 2016. Now, Doom Eternal to me is, I keep describing the game to people as a thinking man's game because there is so much to be aware of when you're playing it. Like when I was in the zone, like in that like flow state, that game makes you think about movement because you can't stand still. You will just get fucked up because there's enemies spawning on every side. But it makes you think about constantly moving. So you've got your dashes, if you've got the rune, you can glory kill from far away. You've got the other ones that give you extra movement. You then got like pickups in the arena, so it's worth moving around for those. Obviously the chainsaw and the blood punch, the flame belch, and the weapons and stuff. Now the biggest differences I found from 2016 to Eternal was the chainsaw now recharges energy. So now you never have to pick up. You can pick up additional ammo for the chainsaw, but you've always got the ability to like, oh shit, I'm low on ammo. Pop someone open. The fodder that's there anyway. You then have the blood punch, which is basically, I think you just fill up. It's like a powerful attack, which is good in some circumstances. I mean, it's kind of good in all circumstances, but I never knew when it was fully charged half the time. Flame belch, which I think was one of the best additions because that allows you to get armor now, and then whatever the other thing is that they added. Oh, grenades. The ice grenade and the normal grenade.
Literally never used them.
Yeah, you never used them. I didn't realize how powerful the ice grenade was until much late into the game. But yeah, so you have all this. So this is where it becomes a thinking man's game, because now you're like, all right, Doom Eternal gives you less ammo overall for each weapon. So you now have to switch. And like for example, if a Cacodemon or a Pain guy comes in, the one that chucks the Lost Souls at you, Ballista, really powerful against air. So you're like, all right, I'll take him out with that. But you've also got the Doom Hunter, the guy on the tread, on the floating thing. All right, well, I better use the pulse gun against him because that's good against him. And then on top of that, you've got that enemy that spawns like that shield in front of you, or you can't use the rocket launcher on that because it'll blow yourself up. So you're constantly thinking and having to move and, trying to figure out all this. This game makes you think and move, and it is hard. Like, straight up, it is a significantly harder game because there is much more to think about. You don't necessarily need to use all these things they've added. I would say that, to be honest, the grenade and the flame belch, while they're really good, I forgot about them a lot of the time. It's just one of those things. There's just so much going on. And if you're in an arena or a particular area that's got like monkey bars or like walls you can like get up and stuff, and then like, an archvile turns up or a marauder turns up, and like you're constantly thinking about all these different things. But the tools are there. You have this big arsenal of things to your advantage. And like I said, like I would use the chain gun shield. Chain gun shield was amazing because it would just take tons of damage, and then when you upgrade it, you could fire it off and stun a demon. In Doom Eternal, they added hard points, so like the big spider guys, you can take out their gun. The Mancubus, the big guys, you can take their armor off and make them easier to kill. Like they added a lot of like destructible parts on a lot of the enemies. And like I said, it's just a significant step up. It is harder. I think if you've played Doom 2016, that's the way to play it. 2016 into Eternal, because it gets you ready a bit more and prepared for what's to come. But overall, I think the combat in both games is good. It's just, I think Eternal does a better job of giving you more tools, and I think you get more upgrades quicker, and you get like crazy. You got like tokens and like runes and weapon mods and mastery tokens, like the super shotgun with the chain grapple on it. You get a mastery on that, and it sets fire to everything you grab. It's a great way for movement, and that's something that we'll get onto later about like movement and things. But like, there are a lot of options in this game, and for me, that made it. It was like, oh cool, I already liked the combat. Now I have more options, and I never at any point found those options to be bad. If anything, I just forgot about it, because there are times when that game gets really hectic, like buff totems, like archviles, which will basically, if you don't deal with those things straight away, those fights go south very fast. And that's something that I like about the game. In terms of the combat versus enemies and the variety of enemies, I think both games nail it. And I think Doom Eternal just cranks it up a bit more. But I think as the games progress and you get into those later levels, by that point you've played the game, you've got used to how you move, you've got different abilities. Like Jack said, you get a sword later on, which just adds to the fact that you can now take out certain enemies that are an absolute bitch. You've got the BFG, you've got a ton of resources. It just makes it harder because every gun has less ammo, and everything. There's just more types of enemies, and there's just more of everything, which again can be a good thing and a negative thing. But for me personally, I got massively absorbed in the combat because I was now thinking every button's being used. I've got to constantly think about this, and this, and this. And they're not necessary, but I do think they add to it. And so, yeah, overall, I think the combat is better, but that depends how much more crazy do you want the combat to be, because that's where the switch is. Doom 2016, fast-paced, a lot of enemies to kill. Doom Eternal, same stuff, but like now we've given you more tools, but now there's more enemies. bigger arenas to fight in, buff totems, monkey bars, and like just a ton more stuff. And I think that massively affects like the difficulty and things like that, really.
I think the upgrades were better in Doom Eternal, to be fair. There was just more options, and I think it was easier to obtain. Whereas in Doom 2016, I wasn't a massive fan of I think it's the Praetorian things, having to find them.
Bodies, yeah.
And also the, not a massive fan of the masteries in Doom 2016. I think it just slowed the pace of combat down. Because you're constantly thinking, right, I've got to get a headshot on this particular enemy. I thought that was just like unnecessary annoyance to try and get a mastery that does something cool. Whereas Doom Eternal, it didn't have that kind of added challenge. Not that it was a challenge, it's just annoying to have to think about. And then you have an opportunity and then you think you do it and you didn't. And it's like, annoying.
Doom Eternal has mastery challenges as well. Like they have exact.
But it has a currency that you can use to just bypass them.
Yeah, you can find some throughout the game and you can just be like, fuck it, I just want the chain on the thing. But like, the mastery things I like because it gives you a thing. But a lot of the time, I found that it would be quite late into the game before I got it because I wasn't thinking about it. So I do agree in both cases that like maybe there was a better way of doing it, but I
don't mind if it was like just kill loads of enemies, like kill 500 enemies with this gun. Like that's cool. But it was just the fact that you had to do specific things, like you have to blow up a certain body part or get a headshot or whatever it might have been. To be honest, I didn't even notice the masteries in Doom Eternal for a long time.
Yeah.
But by the time I noticed them, I had the ones that I wanted. So I'm like, oh, cool. Lovely.
Yeah. So
I think that's an interesting contradiction in both games. This was kind of a criticism that I think a lot of people had, is that when you just want to play through the game and blast enemies and have fun, sometimes you feel obligated to do, like, there's X number of secrets in the level. So it's like, I kind of want to progress to the next area, but I also want to find stuff. So you end up spending 10 minutes trying to find a thing, or you don't just have fun because you're like, okay, I've got to snipe X number of enemies. I can't just kill them. I have to try and snipe him. And there's fun to be had in that. But it's my same opinion on achievements, which are that they're not often that fun. It's one of those kind of bloat things of games where they feel like they need to add more content, but you end up guiding the players down an unfun path to play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Almost needs to be like a separate mode, like a challenge mode for people who want to do that type of thing.
I would say the thing with the masteries is I think the idea is cool because you generally get really cool things out of them. But you're not going to get mastery early on. Like, they are not an early thing. Even with the shotgun. Like, if you've just got the basic shotgun, you're probably not going to have enough points in the first sort of 3 to 4 levels. Maybe by the 4th level you might, but to be even actively working on it. Like the mastery for that one in Doom Eternal, where it's like, oh, now you can fire 5 explosive bombs without having to reload. It's a really cool ability, but that would be really cool, like, early on, because at that point I'm not using that shotgun anymore, but it is weird because I didn't spend much time personally dealing with the masteries, apart from unlocking a couple of them. I completely understand that they do kind of ruin the flow of the game though, because not every situation I'm going to want to use the precision scope. Not every situation am I going to want to use the super shotgun. More often than not, I look at an enemy, I go, what's the best thing for that? And go there. And it's like, oh, there's a snaky dude. All right, I'll microwave beam him. I'm not going to stand there or use a rocket launcher. I'm not going to stand there and try and use the fucking machine gun because I'm not going to hit the bloody thing. I
think this is part of the problem of being a AAA developer, is that you feel like the game needs to have a certain amount of content. You can't just release a bare bones game as a AAA developer. Journey is one that I can think of that was a big studio, I believe, or not massive, but big publisher game that was very bare bones. It didn't try to add loads of extra stuff onto it, and it feels almost like Doom was somebody's passion project. They made this game, loved it, and then somebody came at the end and said, okay, we need more content, we need achievements for the gamers, we need to justify the price tag with X content and playtime, so we need to add in masteries, we need to add in lots of little upgrades. Because you can imagine the game, if the game just gave you all the upgrades at the start, or how Doom Guy is meant to be, that would be a fine game. But there have to be collectibles and upgrades and all of these things. And it's almost the downfall of AAA games is that they have to do these things. And that was, to me, one of the downfalls of Eternal. It's got like, oh God, we've got a much bigger budget now. We have to spend it on things. Let's put more upgrades. Let's put more of everything. And there are so many currencies in Doom Eternal. It's almost like a mobile game with the number of currencies it gives you.
The thing you could do to actually negate. So the thing is, like, Doom, the original Dooms are known for being maze-like exploration games. So these new games kind of try to add that in. That's why you've got a lot of secrets on the maps, whether that be the cheat codes, whether that be the toys, whether that be the mods, the runes, the upgrades for armor and health that also give you extra upgrades. But I think one way that would be really cool is to have almost like at the end of each level, you get to pick one upgrade, and you go, right, okay, so let's say at the end of each level you get to pick either an upgrade for your weapon or an upgrade like health, armor, ammo, right? So you let's just pull it back to those, and that would be kind of cool. It's like, okay, maybe in the later levels you get to pick 2 or something, but you could basically just go at the end of the level, right, pick an upgrade, right, you're going into the next level with that. And I think you would eliminate the need to go off exploring, which some people like and some people don't. But you also don't ruin the flow where you're not like, oh fuck, I don't have that many mod upgrades. I need mod upgrades now. At the end of the level, it's like, hey, do you want a mod upgrade? You can choose one. And then you go into the next level and suddenly you've got this new upgrade. And that might not be the most interesting way of doing it. But if you want to keep the game to be much more like in a flow, I think that's quite cool. You go, cool, right, you've unlocked this. Boom, off you go, next level. Let's go, back into it. But, I'm not a game designer. I like the idea of that. But I will say I'm the person who likes exploring the levels. I liked looking for keys, or I especially liked finding the toys and the albums and the discs, and But I get that's not everyone's cup of tea. They want to go from the next fight to the next fight, getting the cool weapon, getting the weapon upgrades, and just blasting their way through the game. Really,
I was definitely the opposite. I was like, just about getting from one fight to another. Like, I even like the jumping puzzles thing. Just slowed down my enjoyment. I'm just like, I don't really care about this. Just get me to the next fight.
I will say I'm kind of halfway in between, and I do think it's almost an unwinnable battle for the developers, because some people will love the exploration and some people won't. I don't think it's a bad thing that those things are there. I just think it's an interesting thing to note that it kind of clashes. There's very much two sides of the game. And there were times when I really loved exploring, and I loved finding some of those secrets. They were really well hidden.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, there are times when it goes at odds with the flow of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, all right. So let's get on to some things we don't like. I know, Greg, you have a lot of things you want to talk about Eternal. Maybe what I'll do is I'll start with Jack, and then I'll come to you, because I feel like you and me are gonna have some back and forth on this. With certain bits, but
happy to have a back and forth.
So what I might do is maybe we just pick one thing and then we'll go through those things rather than list everything off. Let's talk about one thing at a time. Same for you, Jack. If you want, just pick some things you don't like and we'll all discuss it, or just if you don't have that many things, just kind of rail through it.
Okay, so I'll start with my biggest problem with Doom in 2016 when I started, and that was the optimization on OpenGL engine. Now, I don't know if this was unique to myself or whether this was a genuine issue with the game, but I mean, I've got a relatively powerful machine anyway, as a sort of my non-main PC. Now, when I tried running the game in OpenGL, I had frame drops galore. At first, I thought it was because I had everything on max settings, so I turned it all down. Eventually, I got to the point where I was running at 720p and everything was on minimum settings, and I was still getting these random frame drops. I couldn't put my finger on what it was causing it. I did some research, and everyone was saying, oh yeah, just go use Vulkan rather than OpenGL. Bearing in mind, I'd never even heard of this Vulkan engine before. I ran it in Vulkan, max settings, not a frame drop since. But it took me about 2 hours of just messing around to figure it out at the start. Then I had my other computer back, which was my kind of supercomputer, if you will. Ran it absolutely fine. So I don't know whether it was something to do with the fact that I had SLI on 2 graphics cards, or whether it was just something else, like a bug or an issue with the actual game with an OpenGL. But yeah, something wasn't happy, and that was like my biggest frustration with the game, and that was at the start. 2 hours of just messing about.
I remember that. Yeah.
See, I don't even know what you're talking. I don't even really know what OpenGL is. I'm googling it as you say this. Like what?
So there's an option when you go into Doom 2016. It's only on Doom 2016 to my knowledge, and it obviously by default it's OpenGL, which I think is just a standard graphics API. But then there's an option of Vulkan, but it wasn't something I even twigged really. But
clearly,
yeah, that was definitely an issue for me.
One of those things that affects a certain amount of people, and the other people just don't even know about it, don't even think about it.
Yeah, definitely. If it didn't affect me, I would never have even looked at it. But yeah, it was definitely something.
Yeah, all I can say is I played it on Switch, so I don't even have that luxury for that shit. Like, I want to pull up something quickly just before we go on. Like, this game has a colorblind mode, both of them do, and I can tell you right now that I'm colorblind, and that absolutely was fantastic. Not because it changed colors, it made the game brighter, and I actually really appreciated the fact that when I took, like, my housemate, he also had Doom 2016, and he came in and was like, "What the fuck's wrong with your game?" And I was like, "Nothing. It just looks brighter." And he was like, "Oh, the colors are weird," but it actually made it more playable for me because there was a lot of times it was just super dark, and suddenly I could see everything a lot better, and I didn't need it for Eternal, but it's also there, and I'm really glad with the options in this game, both games. There's a lot of options, and and even on console, there's a lot of options, and that is fucking awesome. And I want to give them credit for that because that is really, really good to see. Jack, I know that was mainly a technical thing. Do you want to go on? You got any stuff about the actual game? Only because neither me or Greg really have anything to say on the open.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to raise it as something that was an issue that I had. I guess my biggest gripe was probably the puzzle aspects of probably both games, really. For me, it was just about getting from area to area. And I often find myself spending 2 or 3 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, trying to figure out, well, where the hell does the game want me to go? I know I'm not the biggest user of maps in the world, but it was just annoying that I had to think about it.
Yeah,
it was just annoying to have to think about, especially with Doom 2016, the whole picking up of key cards. Bearing in mind, like, I get it for people who've played the game before and just know where everything is. That's cool. You probably get a lot more enjoyment from that. But for someone who's never played it and it's just like, right, well, where does the game actually want me to go? Because I swear like I'm backtracking now. And I just felt that was just something that was just, for me personally, not enjoyable because I'm not a fan of puzzles anyway. And just add it into a game that's kind of all about chaos and just, fast action and fast-paced gameplay. I just thought it just took away from that and was a bit, I guess you call it contradictory to what the game was trying to do. But it was just like, oh, really? Another jumping puzzle I got to figure out. It's just like, I just want to fight. I just want to, kill some demons, dude.
So for me, I think the change from combat to a bit of exploration, bit of puzzles, for me that was an important part of the combat loop in the game, because there are times when you play a pure action game, a very pure game, that you get burnt out. You're like, this is just like non-stop highs. You talk about, I don't know if either of you ever saw the documentary, I don't know if it's Half-Life 1 or Half-Life 2, but the developer walkthrough where they talk about it's kind of a cadence where, like, okay, there's a lot of action, give them the chill part to walk around, and then back to action. And I actually quite liked that. Yeah.
I do agree with the point that you've made with the whole ebb and flow of combat. But I think they could have done it in a better way that was more obvious where you're going, and then just have a bit more story, like have someone talking or have someone just like calm you down after that massive fight, chill a little bit and then back into it. Or just like a little bit more obvious where you want to go, in my eyes.
I apart from, like, obviously I use the map in both games, but I will say that the indicator at the top of the screen, the compass, ain't great in either game. It's not great, because there are times you're like, well, it wants me to go this way, but there's a wall, and obviously that comes down to hopefully naturally you would find your way. But there's that level in Doom 2016. It's like a foundry. It's like got the lava at the bottom,
God.
And that level, you walked past that body with the key, and to be honest, it's not that easy to see. It isn't. Like that particular key on that board, like I actually like that level because it is a bit of a maze, but it's so easy to get turned around and lost on it. And like, I'm glad that the game doesn't have too many of those, but that level is probably the best example I can give where it's like, there is quite a lot of combat in it. Like you go from one area and then you grab a key and you're in the next area, and there's a lot of fodder. You know, it's not necessarily all big battles. It kind of leads up to it, but there are times where you're just like, where the fuck's the key? Like, you know, and if you don't open the map up, you're not gonna see that. Which again, you said you don't want to use the map, and I think that's fair. Like, you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't really use the map for secrets. I feel like you're, oh, that looks like there's gonna be a secret there, but that's your own opinion on how you want to play. And I would say that is probably the best example of a map or a level that is very good at confusing people. There isn't many of those, and even in Doom Eternal, I can't think there's one particular level. I can't think which one it is. Similar concept where it's like, it's quite easy to get turned around, and it's just like, ugh. Most of the levels in both games don't do that most of the time. There is also the one in 2016 where you're in that like laboratory bit trying to get the BFG, and there's like so many doors and they're all locked. You have to go in the right one, and like it's not that bad compared
I
to.
think I died 3 times. That was annoying.
But like, there is it is hard to design a level because I feel like it's finding that medium in it by going, here's the key. It's right here, like, you know, and also trying to make people feel like they're naturally finding it. And
almost needs to be like a dual mode, like I would say story mode, where it kind of tells you where to go, type of thing, or a little bit more of a kind of cadence of where to go, and then the kind of hardcore mode where it's just like, go figure out yourself. We've hidden it somewhere. Good luck.
Metroid Prime,
but it felt like it was just.
They should have stolen what Metroid Prime did, because I hated it in Metroid Prime, but it would work perfectly here, which is that because Metroid Prime, you'd wander around the world, and 5 minutes of wandering, the game would go, we found a thing here, investigate this. And it annoyed me in that game because it's like, I just want to explore. I don't want to be told where to go, because the game is all about exploration. In Doom, like, yeah, there's a linear route forward. If the player has been wandering around for more than 2.5 minutes, I'd say, give them the pop-up to say, hey, your scanner computer has found an anomaly here. Maybe you should investigate.
Yeah,
it's an easy thing.
Yeah, and it's to me it is a minor thing. Like, it didn't bother me at all. But like I said, I use the map a lot because I wanted to find a lot of the secrets. I'm like, ooh, I get upgrades and shit like that. But if you literally want to, like, pole vault through the levels, get into the combat, you know, grab the key, go open the door, a nice big fight and all that stuff, you don't want to be slowed down like that. And, you know, I think that's completely reasonable to be like, hey, maybe they should make the keys, maybe just the keys, nothing else, make them a bit fucking obvious. More so, like, obviously there's a dead body with yellow on it, but that's great. But, like, in the heat of battle, especially a lot of the times when I was watching you play, you were like, where the fuck are these? I'm like, oh, it's just over there. And you're like, oh, didn't see that. And that's completely normal, isn't it? Because you're not focusing on this dead body.
It's funny, when I watch my playback, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's really obvious when you're watching someone play, it's very obvious because you're not thinking about 20 different things. You're kind of just watching someone do it. And then you like see things that you don't otherwise see in your peripheral. Yeah. Whereas when you're in the heat of battle and the adrenaline's pumping and you're like, oh, I want to kill this guy. And I'm thinking like 4 steps ahead. I'm like, right, I've got 20 bullets left on this. I'm going to switch to this. And then I'm going to switch to this shotgun. It's a 3 and a 4. And I'm going to, chuck a grenade. Doing all that. And then like, oh, by the way, just over there is like a key. Like, you're just not going to think about it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. It's hard to get that right, for sure. Or at least not make it too obvious, because you want to make it obvious enough, but you also don't want to make it too obvious. So yeah, it's hard. That's definitely something.
Like you say, it almost has like 2 modes, isn't it? It's like one for the like, will kind of gift you where you want to go,
yeah,
or make it a little bit more obvious, and one that's just like, yeah, we'll just make it hardcore.
Yeah. Before I chuck it to Greg, how many things do you have that you like might not like about these games? Just so I've got an idea. And many other things. Not you, Greg. Sorry.
It's different. It's kind of different things depending on what kind of topics we go over.
Okay, cool.
There's all sorts of things I like and dislike.
All right.
Yeah.
I'd say that's probably enough for me for now.
Yeah, sure. All right. We'll chuck it to Greg. Like, give me some either game.
I think we should just dive into it, see how many things we can get through. Because I don't have a huge time limit.
No, neither me.
Go on.
I was going to say, there is something that I don't like about both games, which I really do want to talk about, but I will come to that afterwards. I'd like you to give me maybe
ahead. If you got something, I'll
tutorials, is it?
No. Right, I want to talk about boss fights in both these games because both Doom games, when you are in fighting the minions, right? When you are in those rooms, moving around the rooms, thinking about what you're doing. Right? The game is at its best. Right? Doom 2016, to my knowledge, has 3 boss fights against the Cyber Demon, the Rock Monsters, and the final boss. One of those boss fights is good. That's the Cyber Demon. The other 2 suck ass. Same with Doom Eternal. One boss fight in their game is good. The Gladiator fight. Basically a giant marauder with different modes. The other 2 boss fights, the Khan Maker and the Icon of Sin, suck ass. And both games, I've realized that these guys don't know how to make good boss fights, consistent boss fights. And look, I'll go through why now. I'll let you guys, you may or may not agree with me. The Cyber Demon boss fight is fun. You fight the Cyber Demon in a big room, you move around, you go to the second phase, it gets up. You're now confined to this smaller lane. He has readable attacks, but it requires you to use everything you know. There's area effect attacks, ones you have to move left and right, jump over things. But it's just you and the Cyber Demon, and there's ammo everywhere. So you've got your focus is on that. Mostly the same with the Gladiator boss fight in the second game, because you're focused on the Gladiator. Has a very obvious tell. It's you should attack him when he does his thing with his shield. Right, cool. There are other things going on. His attacks are, again, similar, where you get cornered off and you have to dodge things. And he has 4 different phases. And each phase you break a bit off of him, and that's cool. And there are some fodder, but you don't really have to think about them. There are a couple of times the enemies spawn in, but you can get rid of them quite quickly. Fantastic. Those boss fights, amazing. The Doom 2016 ones, the problem with the Rock boss fight is it's not the first phase. You then have to fight 2 of them. And that's not fun. When I originally did it, I spent the entire time jumping backwards around the outside of the arena, shooting at this thing. That isn't fun. That's not good design, right? Just awful. The final boss isn't even hard. The final boss, which is just basically a spider mastermind, I did it in one take. I died more times on the Cyber Demon than I did on it. I just got the minigun out and I just fucking blasted her. And I was like, well, that was a shit ending. And then with Doom Eternal, right? Now, the Khan Maker boss infuriates me, and I have some things that would fix this boss fight. It infuriates me because the level is so good. The level literally gets you to do the most crazy platforming if you're into that stuff. I loved it. Shooting through the hoops, really hard fight encounters versus the enemies, lots of archviles, there's marauders, there's everything, right? And then you come to this circle arena in the sky. First problem, there's no barrier, right? So you can go off the edge, right? And that fucking wound me up anyway. Now, bear in mind, I went into this boss fight with 8 lives. I had 8 lives when I went into this boss fight. And so this boss, the idea is, right at the beginning, it says, hey, if you need to grab, you can use the shotgun to grapple on it, or use the boost pads to and get up in the blood punch. And the way it works is, you shoot the boss, the shield goes down. When it's gone down, you've got blood punch, right? Go up, punch him. Fine, doesn't sound that difficult. Problem is, the boss has phases, and there's also other things you have to be aware of. Firstly, most of the boss fights and normal attacks will knock you backwards. So you go flying out. If you're trying to dodge around to avoid other things, you're going off the edge constantly, which happened to me. Secondly, you've got the fucking Maker drones, which, if you one-shot them in the head, die instantly. Fine, lots of ammo. But instead of putting ammo drops in this fight, there are some, but there are very few. If there are no Maker drones, and you've killed all of them, and there isn't any ammo, literally it becomes, you have to wait. You just have to wait and wait and wait until more spawn to then get more ammo. Terrible design. On top of that, as the fight goes on, there's this weird corruption that cakes the floor, and it basically forces you to stay on these higher platforms. That's not a fun mechanic. And the reason why is when you put all these things together, I'm trying to focus on the boss. I'm trying to fight the boss. I don't want to deal with the fucking Maker drones. I just put more ammo in the arena. I don't want to fly out the arena. I don't want to have to deal with the corruption stuff. Right. Also, if you don't attack the boss within a time and you get the shield down, it regenerates. And that is also infuriating, because if you run out of ammo, you can't do anything about it. And that boss fight is just awful. You fix that boss fight by getting rid of the Maker drones and putting ammo everywhere, because the boss fight's already knocking you about. It's already got an aerial strike attack. It's got corruption. So your focus should be on the boss and moving. It should not be on these other dudes. Fine, you want to have it so you get knocked out of the arena. Fine, whatever. The fact that I went to that boss fight, I lost 8 lives and had to restart. And eventually it was like, do you want to use the Sentinel armor? And I was like, yes. I don't want to play this shit. Awful. Right. Boss fight's out of the way. Next thing, Icon of Sin. Great level. Phase 1. awful, because now you then have to fight this boss that has 3 levels. Now, depending on what height he is, he does different attacks. Can you read those attacks? If you've never done that boss fight before, you'll get punched, you'll get knocked off the level, all kinds of crazy shit, right? And it's not the boss itself isn't the hard thing. The problem is you have to take off different parts of the armor. Well, it doesn't make it very particularly obvious when you're hitting it. They do flash, but it gets to the point where I'm like, where's the last piece of armor? And I'm now dealing with like fucking spider masterminds and gargoyles and all these other shit. Luckily, in that boss fight, tons of ammo, loads of minions, like whatever, fine. Then you get to the second phase, which is actually better. The second phase is like you got to blow its body off, but you're in a much better arena. It's much easier to hit, and the enemies aren't as crazy. And I just think to myself, when it came to those boss fights, I was like, this game, up until this point, was like 10 out of 10 for me. And it literally was like somebody doing a running start and just fell on their face. I was like, whoever's making the boss fights in this game is not realizing what makes the combat fun. The combat is fun when you don't have to deal with X mechanic on top of X mechanic on top of X. That comes in the forms of the different demons, right? So when you're in a fight and you go, oh, there's a spider mastermind, that guy can crawl on the ceiling, I might want to get rid of him now, right? Very obvious thing to deal with. You know, a tyrant turns up, you're like, oh, get the sword out. Like, you can't use the BFG and the sword and things like on the bosses. I think you can use the BFG on Khan Maker, but yeah, I cannot stand the boss fights. Apart from that gladiator fight and the cyber demon thing, I think the boss fights are utterly shit. And if you take those boss fights out, or you make it you versus the boss and less of the enemy stuff, you have significantly better bosses. The problem with Khan Maker is also an aerial boss, so you can't like run up to it and like do it. Like you have to aim, and if you like, that's the good thing about Icon of Sin. It's massive, so it's easy to hit. But yeah, quite frankly, just my biggest gripe with both games is the boss fight. They are the lowest point of the entire games for me. And I've been talking for a while now, but if you guys want to, if you've got anything to say on the bosses, like go ahead. Whoever wants to.
It's very interesting because you're a bigger fan of Eternal. I'm a bigger fan of 2016, but you hated Icon of Sin. I think he's a great boss fight. I agree that these games do not do bosses well in general. I don't think many people are going to argue Khan Maker was a good fight. I don't think anyone really enjoyed the Khan Maker fight. It was shit. But I think, what Doom does best is throw a load of demons at you and say, kill them as fast as you can before you die, because if you don't, they're going to overrun you. And that is Icon of Sin, really. It's just constant waves of demons that never stop. And in the Icon of Sin fight, they intensify. The longer you take to kill him, the worse the enemies coming at you get. And look, I didn't personally have a problem really seeing the armor. I can see why it would be. It wasn't super clear. But I actually thought, the game ended on a really high note for me. So interesting.
The biggest problem I have with Icon of Sin is that in the first phase, not less so in the second phase, the first time you get to that boss fight, you have to realize there are 3 stories, which is fine, because the idea is you keep moving between them so you dodge his attacks. The problem is, it's really hard to learn his attacks while you're also dealing with other demons, because he has like these punching attacks when you're down the bottom, but he has like these shooting attacks.
Boss, man.
I know, and that's fine, but it escalates too fast. Like, give me some time to understand what's going on, and I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that I felt like, yeah, all right, at this point,
we don't need any time, because Doom Eternal does what it does with every single enemy in the game, which is the moment you get there. And this will be the complaint I want to seek into. I don't know if you'll allow me to do this right now, or if we want to let Jack have a turn on the bosses. But I want to have a rant about the tutorials in it.
We will get to that, because I knew that was going to come.
1 second, guys. Yeah. The recordings got one issue, and Levi's frozen again. Just one moment. I'm going to see if I can pause the recording or something. Sorry, 1 second, folks. All right, folks, apologies about that. We had a bit of a technical difficulty where I was messing around with some settings, and Levi kind of froze on us. So we're back. We're all good. Just about talking about the Icon of Sin boss fight, which I actually enjoyed.
Yeah, so I mean,
just putting that out there.
Greg was saying about like he thinks it's a combination of things. I was saying not the biggest fan of the fact that it chucks you in there and like you know what you're doing, but the actual boss pattern attacks is kind of like you don't get time to learn. I don't like that in a boss fight. Anyway, Jack, you might as well go over these because we kind of had our opinions on the boss fights, whether it's ones in 2016 or whether it's ones in Doom Eternal, so just like hit it.
Yeah, so I completely agree with your rock dude fight, that one where he splits into two. Like, the first phase of that is a really fun boss fight, and then he turns into two, and it just becomes chaotic. They charge at you, and it's like there's not really much warning of that, and they just jump at you. It's just not fun. That really took me by surprise. In the end, I just ended up using 3 BFG ammos and just killed them that way. Because I just couldn't be bothered to deal with it. Honestly, it was just ridiculous. The one where you're dodging the lasers and stuff, always all the different attacks. I think it was the first of the 3 boss fights. I actually enjoyed that one.
Yeah,
I actually enjoyed that one. That was kind of, you had to be quite strategic in how you played it. And yeah, just understand his moves. Do you know what the interesting thing with this is? Doom boss fights remind me a lot about Borderlands and Borderlands boss fights, in that the games are so good, like top of their genres, and then when it comes to boss fights, they kind of just fall apart a little bit. Like, yeah, there's definitely boss fights I dislike. Obviously the Khan Maker being the one I hated the most, I think, in all of the series.
Yeah.
It was just annoying. I didn't actually notice that first part where it said you got to use the blood fist. I figured that out on the fly, and I was like, oh, what's going on? Like, her shield's down, and basically I just ran out of ammo. That was my problem. So I had to literally jump off the edge to get my ammo back. I'm like, well, that's cool. And that happened. And yeah, the corruption on the ground is just annoying, or the flames or the fire, whatever. There are a couple of other boss fights in Eternal I wasn't too bad, but I think there's Mutated Seraphim. It was the last boss fight in the first Ancient Gods Part 1.
Oh, I haven't played Ancient Gods, but yeah, okay, fair enough.
Same.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't spoil anything for anyone who hasn't then, but that's a bitch of boss fight.
Is that the floating dude? And you're in that room with the light. Yeah, okay, I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen it, but yeah, that does.
Oh, it's just that. That caused me a little bit of grief.
Yeah.
And basically, what happens is he's got he turns like the biggest enemies, like he spawns enemies basically, and he links them as if they are spirits.
Yeah.
So they're like faster, stronger, smarter, all that good stuff. As if they're possessed, they do more damage, and it's just bloody annoying, more than anything. And then I did like the final boss fight in the second, the one where you're against
Doom guy,
the main guy, the main villain. I don't want to spoil everything for people who haven't played the game, but ultimately that boss fight was really good up to the final phase where you can't see his health anymore. They removed his health bar. So you're just there, like, wailing on him. It literally, I was there for 6 minutes shooting at him, not knowing if I was doing damage or not, because I had no life bar or nothing to, like, work out. So I'm like, Like, I literally did the combo, like, must have been 10 times in that time.
Yeah.
And it was just annoying. I'm like, is this guy going to die, or is this just going to go on forever? Like, what am I doing wrong? And it's, like, constantly dodging. One thing I will say about Doom Eternal is, excluding the Khan Maker fight, they have a lot of enemies, even just like those zombie dudes that you can literally just chainsaw and get ammo back. So you can literally keep on fighting and getting your health back. So I will say that was a good part of it. Even in the final boss fight. The Icon of Sin, I actually really enjoyed. I liked the whole thing of shooting different body parts off. I liked both phases because it's more about fighting the enemies around you rather than the boss. And it just kind of gives you that sense of, holy shit, there's someone behind me. That adrenaline was proper kicking in. But yeah, I say the Doom 2016 final boss fight was pretty lame. Pretty boring.
It's too easy. Like, to me, it's like they kind of went too far the way with Icon of Sin. Like, Icon of Sin should be hard, and I'm not taking that away. Like, what they do, especially in Phase 2. Phase 2 of Icon of Sin, I liked. It was a better arena. It was much more obvious what you were doing, and it was easier to deal with the demons. It wasn't like easy because you still got him firing at you the entire time and dealing with it. The first phase is too many jumping around and like trying to get close and far away. It's too much. When you start introducing extra shit into the combat where it's like beyond like being fun anymore. That's when I had a problem with it, because like fighting the regular demons in both games is so much fun, because you're like, all right, I know I can take out this stuff and blah 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 and bam bam bam, and you've got the tools to do it. When you then introduce like, oh, now you got this big guy that's got like, I don't know, 6-7 different attacks, but if you're not facing that way, you're not going to see them coming. And oh yeah, and like, there's a fucking 10 of the big brutes coming at you. Like, oh my god. Like, I know it's a culmination of everything. It's trying to push all your skills to that, but the levels do that so much better than the boss fights. The boss fight, like I said, you get rid of phase 1 of Icon of Sin, much better fight. Would have loved it, But I also think the problem is with that fight on a personal level was especially in the first part, it's hard to see which bits of the armor are broken at some point. Second part is body goes all bony, so it's really easy to go, oh, I've destroyed that like arm, or oh, I've destroyed that shoulder pad. And I think what you do is, if you want to have 2 phases, make like I don't know, make the armor yellow or something. Like, so I'm like, oh, it's really obvious that I've destroyed the armor on this section of the body, because. Not to go off on too much of a tangent, Doom, while it is a serious game to a degree, it's very comical, but all the ammo and the like upgrades, everything like that is neon bright. Like, it is video game the game. Like, it's got like this really nice art style, and then the ammo looks like out of like Unreal Tournament, of these old little games, to make it really obvious. So why can't you make the boss sections really obvious? Yeah, I know if the Icon of Sin was bright yellow, that would look kind of weird. But like, do something to make it a bit more obvious, and that would have probably fixed most of my issues with the boss fight, honestly. But yeah,
fair. There is one boss fight which I may end up opening a can of worms here with this one, and that was the first time they introduced the Marauder. I don't know if that had a specific name, but that Marauder boss fight was bloody awesome, hard but awesome, until they introduced the Marauder as a standard unit, and that was just first time round, that really got me. I did not have fun.
So can I go into my rant now about prescriptivism? Because this permeates every pore of the game.
Yeah. Before you do it, like, I will say I have thoughts on the Marauder. I have lots of thoughts on it, but yeah, go.
Because I think this is where this includes the Marauder. This includes a lot. But while you were talking about obviously the Icon of Sin, me going, well, it tells you what to do. This is I think one of the worst things about the game, is whenever you meet a new enemy. For me in video games in general, part of the fun is figuring out what to do, improving, getting better. Whenever you meet an enemy for the first time in Doom Eternal, you get a tutorial window pop up and say, here is the best way to defeat this enemy. Disregard any creativity or having any fun with trying to learn how this enemy works. We're just going to tell you. Am I alone in that?
Did you get one for the Arch File? Because I don't remember getting one for the Arch File.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm pretty sure.
Is it every enemy? I know you get one, Spider Mastermind, the first one. So I don't think. Do you get them for like the imps and smaller enemies? Does it come up as fodder? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I remember it being for like the heavies. So like Spider Mastermind, not one for the Tyrant. The Tyrant doesn't get one. That's the big fuck off tool dude. But you're right. For certain,
when you meet the Maker drones in late game, immediately it says the correct way to kill these enemies is to headshot them.
Yeah. So it seems to be. It doesn't seem to be all the enemies, but it does seem to be very specific ones. Marauder, Archvile, Cacodemon. Yeah, because the not Baron of Pain. What the fuck is it called? The flying thing with the hands. That thing doesn't get one either, I don't think.
Lost Souls thing.
Yeah. It's the thing that fires them out.
I don't know if that's not.
No, Lost Souls is what it fires out. But yeah, that I've always it's like Pain Revenant. I can't remember what the fuck it's called. But yeah, it is interesting.
Let's use the Marauder as an example. Let's get into it as an example of this prescriptivism as well. Although I would make the argument, I'll go into that other point later. My friend, a friend I had once told me about Batman Arkham Origins, and I think it was Deathstroke. There's a boss fight in that game, and he said the fight was disappointing. I said, why is the fight disappointing? And he said, because the game didn't let me fight him. I wanted to fight Deathstroke. I wanted to have a real fight. But when you get to Deathstroke, Greg, just follow the prompts on screen and do what the game tells you. And it's kind of a series of quick time events. You don't get a choice in the matter. You don't get to approach him the way you want to approach him. You just have to follow the prompts. You have to press the counter button when it comes up. You have to mash the buttons when it tells it to come up. And then you will get a cutscene where Batman wins the fight. And that is, to me, the core flaw of Doom Eternal. I'll go into it now. The changes to the combat system, the additions of a lot of cooldown-based ability. Because I think people talk about, when you go to MMORPGs, Jack, I know you've played some MMOs. Levi, I know you don't really. But when you learn how to play a class in MMOs, you get guides saying, this is your rotation. You press this button, this one, this one, this one. You get a rotation. And when people use the word rotation, I'm like, that is the most boring thing. I'm literally pressing buttons in a circle. And Doom Eternal takes cues from MMORPGs for how to design a single-player game's combat system. I'm just like, why do I have a series of cooldown? Because to me, I did use all of the things that Doom Eternal told me to use. I used the flame belch, I used the grenades, I used the chainsaw, and later on the sword and the BFG. But I feel like there's no better way to use them than simply just use them as they come up. Even the flame belt, you can make the argument that you want to wait until there's a group of enemy. But I found that you really just want to use it as soon as you can. If you're fighting a big single enemy, one of the big fat dudes, I forget what they're called, you just want to use the flame belch and you just keep shooting. And so it's part of a rotation. It felt like playing an MMO. And while there are still choices in how to use them, where to use them, and the way you're going to trace your way through the map while you're using them, it's still a case of this is not a choice you're making. It's when the cooldown flashes, press the button. And that's, to me, the core flaw. So, and then let's just go into the Marauder real quick. Just real quick, because the Marauder is the perfect example of all this prescriptivism. You face the Marauder, you get the tutorial flashing up saying this is exactly how you fight the Marauder, and then you follow the exact dance steps, and if you perform them correctly, the game says, "Good job, Greg. You did it correctly. You get to keep playing." So, and I didn't find him hard. I just found him boring.
So I have a lot to say on a lot of that stuff, but let's start with the Marauder because, right? So the Marauder is interesting because there is more. This is the thing. The game, like with the Cacodemon, straight away it's like, oh, fire the grenade into the Cacodemon. That'll instantly give you the ability to glory kill it. Do you know how many times I did that? Very little. Do you know why? I hardly used that shotgun. By the time I got machine guns, I just fucking murdered it. Should I have done that? Probably, but there's a lot of times with those demons where, for me, I had my own ways of dealing with it. I'm not saying, this is a good thing, because it is essentially showing you it. The Spider Masterminds, it's oh, snipe the thing off. I never sniped one of those off. I just didn't use the snipe shot that much, because, you know what? I go shoot the snipe shot on the macro missiles. I want to fucking fire missiles. I don't want to have to deal with, some of the stuff it was suggesting. It's there, but I wonder how many people followed it. I mean, probably more than didn't, but, I didn't do that with a lot of the things. One thing I forgot to mention, the Doom Hunter, the guy that's on the floating platform, is actually a boss, but like the Marauder, before you fight those things normally. That one I think is bigger and has more health. And there is a way that you defeat it. You basically want to blow up the sled and then kill it. But the Marauder, let's get on to probably the most divisive enemy in the entire game. I didn't have much trouble with it. I had more trouble with the Doom Hunters and dying to those things. But the Marauder is designed to be an enemy that is much more melee focused and has a shield. It requires timing. And to be honest, the Marauder, I actually think generally is quite well designed. But having, for me, it was easy. I'd already watched Jack's gameplay of it. I already read about the Marauder. I knew how to deal with him. It was just walk backwards, his eyes flash, shoot him in the face with a shotgun, switch to the ballista, shoot him then, rinse and repeat 2 times, done. Now, I like the Marauder. I think he's really a fun enemy. However, after finishing the game, I went and did a bit of reading on people's opinions of it. And somebody brought up the idea that every single enemy in Doom Eternal, you can pretty much, you can glory kill, you can use any item on them whenever. The Marauder, however, doesn't act like any other demon in the game. You can't just bomb rush this thing. If there is a Marauder in the middle of a fight, you can do it 2 ways. You can either kill everything else off first and then deal with the Marauder, because he's going to hunt you down. He's going to spend that time chasing you around. Or you have to try and get rid of him quickly. The problem is that if you've got other demons, he completely, it just becomes very hard to deal with. He breaks the flow of combat more than any other demon. Now, I don't mind fighting a Marauder. There's that bit where you're on a long bridge and you're fighting, I don't mind fighting the Marauder, but I have to agree with what this person said. He does break the flow of combat. Because if you take the Marauder out...
on that.
Yeah, if you take the Marauder out and you're fighting with the other enemies, they're all moving around. You don't have to think about them in the sense of, I have a specific timing window. Maybe the Archvile with that flame thing, but you can just pull out the BFG or the sword and hack him up. Not a problem. Every other demon, you can use anything you want. You can either use the tutorials, you can just whip out the minigun, you can use the destroyer blade, the rocket launcher, whatever you want to do. Set the Marauder, because he will block everything that you fire at him unless you do. You can fire a BFG and he'll block that, and when it's going past him, you can shoot him. You can quick switch to different weapons to deal with him when he attacks. And it's crazy. I didn't think about it at the time because I didn't have a problem with the Marauder. But if you're enjoying the combat, and then suddenly you've got this asshole that's constantly chucking out a dog if you shoot his shield, or hitting you or shooting you, and you have to use a very specific timing, it makes the combat harder, but not necessarily more fun. Because now you're having to deal with an enemy that doesn't work like any other enemy in the game. Even the Doom Hunter, the guy on the tracks, has a shield, but you can just use energy weapons. Once he's off the track, he no longer has a shield. And now he acts like a normal enemy. You can still kill him without taking his shield off. It just takes more ammo. So you go, oh, fuck it, I'll use the microwave beam or whatever and blow up his shield, and then your track's gone. But the Marauder doesn't work like that. And if you, knowing what I know when fighting the Marauder, I watched Jack's playthrough of it when he did it. And that boss fight against that Marauder, that first encounter, is really short if you know how to deal with him. It's shotgun blast, blah, blah, done. Glory kill. You must have been on that boss fight for about 10 minutes. It was a long time because you did. I don't know if you even took any notice of the tutorial, to be fair. I think you were just blasting him. And you didn't realize that the dog came out if you shot the shield. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But I have.
Is it when you shoot the shield? I thought it was if you get too far away.
No, if you shoot the shield, that's when the dogs spawn. If you don't ever shoot him with the shield up, the dog will never spawn.
Oh.
So, yeah. He'll just chase you down.
This is what we talked about earlier about the reason we didn't like the Khan Maker fight is because there are moments when sometimes you just have no ammo and you just have to wait.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I don't like. The same thing about the Marauder is there are times when you just have to wait. I find that boring.
I think the way to make the Marauder better, right, is to give the Marauder, so when you shoot the Marauder, he doesn't get stunned. Like a lot of the enemies, you can stun them. So if you remove the fact that he's going to come at you, make him a bit faster maybe, make him enough that if you don't dash away, he's going to catch up to you. Give him the axe, maybe give him slightly more range on the shotgun or whatever, but get rid of the ability to for him to block and make him unstunnable. That way you can shoot him with whatever. He's going to get on you quicker if you don't move, but you never feel like you have to wait for things. Now, again, I'm not a game designer. I only suggest this because I think that way...
It's actually a pretty good idea, I think.
Yeah, because that way you're not locked into having to wait. You're not having to use specific weapons. You now have a very dangerous enemy like the Archvile, like the Cyber Demon. A target that you need to get rid of right now, but you don't have to wait for the thing. It's just a very fast enemy that's going to get up in your face and do a lot of damage. And I think that might fix some of the problem. I don't know how that would be implemented, but yeah, Jack. I mean, you might as well give your all your thoughts on the Marauder. I know that you quite liked it the first time, and then obviously had issues with it later on. But I mean, you know how to deal with it now.
Yeah, I guess it is one of those things that hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah.
I probably didn't read the tutorials as much as I would. I just wanted to play the game and have fun. And yeah, I didn't understand the mechanics when I first played against them. But the boss fight was long. I thought, that's great. That was a good boss, but I'd have to fight him again. Great. And then, a couple of missions later, they turned up again. What was this crap? And it's just constant. You hit him, I guess, and he spawns. I didn't realize that, how he worked mechanically. So I understood about the green flash.
Yeah.
I did understand that. But he does so much damage that every time you try to run away, he'll spawn dogs and now what's attacking me? And it's just constant. There's no room to breathe. throws the axe at you, he shotguns you if you get too close. But now I know how to fight him. He's really easy.
Yeah.
But before I knew that, when I'd first played the game, there was no guides or anything. It was literally on release. I just struggled, man. Like, every time I fought one, it was like, literally, I was pissing about for 10 minutes trying to kill these damn things. And yeah, it was not fun.
Yeah,
I always took the approach of kill everything. So I was like, oh, fuck it. I'll deal with you later.
Yeah, that's what I
yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same.
We can do the dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting design because you see that's a lot of people were like, absolutely, this thing is the worst thing, is bullshit, and it wasn't.
It is. I was literally calling bullshit as I was playing. I'm like, this is what the fuck am I supposed to do against this thing?
Yeah,
can't shoot him. He's got a shield. He spawns crap. You know, it's just like can't run away. He attacks you with an axe. Can't get close to him because he shotguns you. You can't shoot him because he's got a fucking shield. Like, what do you do? Like, come on.
You know,
I gotta wait 5 minutes for you to keep shooting me.
You can't use a sword on him either. If you use the sword, it wastes the charge. I found out the hard way. I was like, oh shit. No, he is a very interesting and divisive enemy. Like, knowing how to defeat, like, things, I know how to deal with pretty much all the enemies. My least favorite enemy in the game is the Archvile. Not because it's bad design, because as soon as an Archvile turns up, I'd be like, oh fuck, everything's overpowered now, I need to like deal with it. But the Marauder itself is completely different to every other enemy in the game, and it's interesting. He doesn't turn up that much, to be fair, maybe 4 or 5 times, maybe more than that, I don't know. But
it is more than that, especially when you take the expansions into account.
A couple of them at the same time, let's go.
Yeah, there was 2 at once.
But
I think there was one other character as well, demon, that I think is very similar in what you were saying about the disrupts the flow of combat, and that is the spirit.
Yeah, but that's in the expansion, so I can't speak.
It sounds like the spirit is very much like the Archvile, honestly. Who, when you were describing him, I was like, that sounds like the Archvile. I kind of hated the Archvile until I just got the sword, and then I would always just be like, fuck you, Archvile.
Well, you can only kill it with the microwave gun. It's the only way to kill it, and and if you don't kill him quick enough, you have to possess. So they'll possess something else.
Yeah,
it's and obviously when it does possess something, it's like twice as much health, twice as strong, just twice as much damage. It's just annoying to deal with, and it just, like you say, you just spend 5 minutes trying to faff around with this thing, and if you're trying to stun him or something, and then someone bops you, it's like you just got to kind of like stand there for a good 5 seconds whilst you're microwaving it. Yeah. It's just annoying.
Can I real quick, Hugo Martin, if you're out there, I saw that you said, this is a fucking call out on my twitter.com. Hugo Martin did a thing. PC Gamer wrote an article saying, the Marauder guides you into the fun zone. Hugo Martin, I thought you would know this. Being the creative director of Doom 2016, waiting isn't fun. That's all I have to say.
Right. I want to bring it back because you were saying about a lot of the waiting and the rotation stuff of the controls and the extra abilities in Doom Eternal. Now, I want to counter that because I actually disagree massively. The reason for that is 90% of the time I forgot those abilities were there because I didn't. Bear in mind, right? I only have a 32-inch TV when I'm playing Doom. So the UI is a little bit small for me. Now, I didn't know what any of the cooldown times were on any of those items. Now, if you got a bigger TV, it probably pops up and it's really fucking obvious. A lot of the time when I was in combat...
There's no numbers on there.
No. It dings, doesn't it, or something. Now, when I was in combat, a lot of the time I roughly knew how much the chainsaw would take. It wasn't very long. The blood punch wasn't necessarily very long. The flame belch and the grenade, I had no idea the entire game. And a lot of the time, I didn't initially use them. A lot of the time, I would only punch when there was a glory kill to be had. So the blood punch did get used, but it wasn't something that I used massively. The grenade and the ice grenade are really, really cool items. The ice grenade specifically is a really cool, pardon the pun, it's a really good item, and it definitely helps eliminate some of the madness for a few seconds. But again, I forgot to switch to it half the time. And then the flame belch, I used more towards the end of the game. But not at any point did I ever feel like I was rotating. A lot of the time, the combat was mostly me focused on which gun is the right gun for now. Looking at the arena, constantly moving, constantly dealing with it. And I'm not saying that there isn't a rotational thought process there, but I'm very curious to how many people were constantly like, right, 5 seconds ago and I can punch, 5 seconds ago and I can flame belt. It's like, at no point was I thinking like that. I think the game was very much like, these tools are here. If you can remember to use them, every button does something, use it. And I think as the game goes on, as you get further into it and introduced to some of these abilities later on, my brain started to wire itself to know I've got these things. A good chunk of that game, I honestly did forget about a lot of the items, or I'd push the wrong button sometimes. I'd be like, grenade, no, flame belch. And to me, that's not I don't see that as a bad thing. Literally, to me, I see Doom 2016 as combat up to 11, and now I see with this one, combat up to 15. To me, and this is just personal preference, I think the combat is significantly better in Doom Eternal in terms of your tools, what you can do, the upgrades for your weapons, the movement abilities, all of that, while fighting the demons, nothing else, while fighting the demons, is significantly better because you feel they added, like, having the double jump from the start, having the double dash, being able to, like, air hit people and dash off them and stuff. It all accumulated into a much more intense and harder, because it is a harder game in terms of combat, but a much more intense, harder fight, but you had the tools there to use. Not necessarily you're going to remember to use them, but you had them there.
One tiny little addition I will make is that I will say they made a huge improvement in the patches this year. When I was actually finishing Eternal, and I realized they added crosshair icon. So you don't have to keep looking away from the center of the screen. Once chainsaw is up, once flame belch is up, it's right there on the crosshair. And I was like, that tiny little change, just a visual thing. It's kind of like you were saying with the armor on the icon of sin. It's literally just a visual thing, and I think it partly is affected by your colorblind. It's not even really a skill thing. It's just the ability to see and know and make it visually accessible for the player. I'm
not a fan when bosses flash red. Like, not that I can't see that, but you got to bear in mind the icon of sin fight when it comes to UI it's already a dark thing. Make it flash green, yellow, blue, anything else. Like, that literally would have made that fight significantly better because you've already got dark on dark. Now, maybe I should have gone in the colorblind mode and fucked around with that. But I don't know about these icon things. I have no idea if it's on Switch or not. But that does sound useful. If your crosshair has little things either side of it to say, hey, this is charged up or whatever, so your focus is on the middle of the screen, cool. That's just an improvement, full stop. And I think, you shouldn't have to look away from the action. Right, all the information should be very obvious there. It could be audio cues. There may well be audio cues to these things. I think one of them goes beep when you get it back, but I'm not sure. I think it might be blood punch.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you're firing a minigun. It's going, you're not going to hear this thing go. Yeah. And it is hard. I will say, like, that is something difficult, and I don't have a problem with it myself because, again, I'm not thinking in it in terms of rotation. I'm like, oh yeah, I've got the flame belch. Fire that now. I'm not a min-maxer. I'm not going to wait until the perfect time. I'm just like, fucking chuck everything if I've got it.
I'm a min-maxer when I die 5 times on the same fight trying to kill the archvile.
BFG.
Like, I just want to get past this fight.
Like, BFG every time.
I'm just not having fun anymore.
BFG and the minigun. Minigun with the shield. Literally, minigun with the shield has 400 shield. Has more shield than you can have.
But he keeps teleporting away, and then you have to run to the other side of the map because all the enemies beeline you. In
so that's interesting. That only happened to me in the big square. The first time you meet him in that big square, that time happened
in the middle.
Yeah, every other fight, he literally teleported like 5 feet away. So I was like, all right then.
Yeah, he teleported from one side to the other.
Yeah, and he does stay there for a while. But don't get me wrong, the Archvile's bitch. But like, yeah, in terms of like stuff going on in combat, Jack, I mean, you were similar to me, I think, when it came to like forgetting that you had tools. But do you think that enhanced the gameplay? Do you think that's a problem? Like, what are your thoughts on those additions, like with like blood punch and flame belch and things like that?
I think it's great to have them. I didn't use all of them all the time. The blood punch I used the most, and there was only one small snag with the blood punch. I don't think it had a rotation charge. I think it just had a number of charges, and once you ran out, you had to get them back. But the issue, I believe, was sometimes I would blood punch instead of fatality because they're on the same key. Because that's like a melee thing.
Yeah.
So if you've got a blood punch, and I think it's to do with the ranging. If you're slightly outside of the range to fatality, even though you think you are, it will blood punch, and it's just a little bit of a waste. So I did find myself wasting the blood punch a few times, but that's my only gripe with it. I really enjoyed the blood punch. I thought it was really good. It was really good against pinkies as well. If you can like get behind them and punch their tails off,
it's really.
They are the most
Wasn't there some
annoying.
kind of blood punch in 2016 as well? Though I can't.
No,
I'm sure there was.
I think there was something you could pick up, wasn't there? There was a
Maybe
chart.
It was an upgrade.
relic.
No, it was a relic. I'm sure you picked it up. There was like a little. There was like a little fist, wasn't there? And then you just picked it up, and then you just go on a rampage for like 30 seconds.
Oh, you had berserk mode.
No, that's berserk.
Yeah. Berserker thing. That's it.
Yeah, that's a power up.
Yeah, same thing.
That's blood punch mechanic. I'm sure there was where it's charged up by glory killing enemies. Maybe I'm mad. I was sure that was in 2016.
In Doom Eternal, that's how you do it. You glory kill people, and that's how it charged up. That's definitely you might have had something from the relics, but like I'm pretty sure berserk and speed and stuff were also in Doom Eternal, but just not.
Definitely were. I think that's how I would.
Yeah.
Closest thing in from my memory was in Doom 2016 was the berserker.
Yeah.
Power up.
Which
incidentally I always found after the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I'm like, oh yeah, I could have done with that double damage for like the last 30 seconds. That would have been quite useful.
Yeah. While Greg's looking for that, I just want to go over a couple other things away from negatives for a minute, because I do want to highlight something that personally, on a personal thing, that I really enhanced the gameplay, and that is the platforming / movement abilities in this game. I am a huge fan of platformers. I like when platforming feels good. And Doom Eternal takes huge steps from the original Super Mario Brothers. That might sound really dumb, but there are parts where there are spinning fire bars and you have to jump over them, and then swing on the monkey bars. But the monkey bars themselves, the double jump from the get go, the double dash, a lot of the platforming, like right in my wheelhouse, and also the ability to grip hold of walls, so you can like grab a wall and then jump off of it, and you could, especially in the late levels, you go massive distances. You like all these tombstones and you're flying off, and that was a huge improvement to me. Not because the game necessarily needed it. The game didn't necessarily have to go in a platforming inspired way, but to me this is massively inspired by a lot of platforming games, and I really liked that. I liked the double dash. I think the double dash is probably the most significant upgrade in terms of combat, because it meant if you were like almost boxed into one thing, you go bam and like get yourself out of trouble. There were times when you would get boxed in. I got stuck by enemies sometimes. You just lose a life. It was just like, well, fuck, I shouldn't have stood there. But the ability to like jump dash and stuff like that, and like the distance you could get, but like add that with the monkey bars, and if you had the relic, you could do that relic that would slow down time, and like when you're in the air, there was some really cool things you could do with it. Now, I completely understand that this is on a personal level fantastic for me. Some of those levels, like the level with the Khan Maker on it, there is some serious platforming on that level where you're shooting through rings and you have to like line it up and then grab a wall and then jump off of stuff, and that isn't everyone's cup of tea. I get that, and I completely understand that 2016 doesn't really have that much platforming. It has some, but not a lot in comparison. But to me, that was awesome. I was like, I got more ways to explore. Like I sometimes would leap off the side because I had the ability to see where all the secrets are. I'm like, leap off the side and then dash through a wall to get to a secret. There was just so many cool things that they did with it that really enhanced the gameplay for me, because I love that stuff. And that was just, it's a very different mechanic to 2016. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like better than 2016, but it was more my flavor. I was like, oh, cool that I can jump around in the combat on the monkey bars and shoot at people, and and like the exploration was expanded in a way that I liked. Whereas some people aren't going to like that as much because they want it to be more grounded. And so the combination of the double dash and a lot more of the environment to be explored with the monkey bars, the grips, things like that, that was, for me, a huge improvement. But not one that is necessarily better. It's just a flavor that I liked.
It worked for me because I have jump bound to LB on the gamepad. So it's very easy for me to hop around. And I love aerial combat in games in general. I'm a big Smash Bros. Juggler, for example. Yeah. So I actually loved that in Eternal.
I'm pretty sure I know what Jack's going to say.
I don't hate all of Eternal.
I think Jack was probably not a fan of the platform. Having said that, your playthrough of it, though, you did pretty good with the platforming in this game.
I don't think it was that bad, actually. I found Eternal was easier to navigate, although not in every instance. There were areas where I just got stuck for a couple of minutes trying to figure out where I'm going. But I think it did a slightly better job of kind of explaining where to go. And I did use the map a lot more in Eternal, ironically. But yeah, the movement options I preferred with Doom Eternal. Not to say they were bad with Doom 2016. I just thought they were a little bit, you could do some cooler things.
I think that dash really comes down to that. If you're used to playing the game with a dash, and I used it a lot, so it does. You notice that, and I think that was the thing that really opened up some opportunities and some cool things. Because I don't know, can you dash into enemies in this to stun them? Like, you might have been able to. I'm not sure, but like there might be a relic or something for it. But like, I know obviously you could dash through walls and things that were breakable and stuff, but I think that was single-handedly the thing that really, really improved the movement in the game. So.
Yeah, ironically, that fountain fight, it took me ages to figure out how to dash through that breakable wall. That took me literally, I was walking around for a good 10 to 15 minutes. I went down into the water thing, trying to figure out, I was like, it must be around here somewhere. I didn't realize you could dash through the water to break a wall. I'm like, oh my God. Well, I did it by mistake. Yeah. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Literally spent 10 minutes trying to figure that out.
The underwater sections with the toxic like suit, and you have to like, oh, straight up out. They were cool, but they are awfully designed. Like it is kind of hard to know like which switches to shoot and stuff, and like it didn't need to be there. I don't think like maybe that was the one time a tutorial would have been useful to like dash through it, but
I will say the tutorials were the most annoying things. Every 5 seconds, like, oh, here's how you do this, and then it's like a little jumping challenge. I'm like, fuck off.
Stop interrupting.
Like, there was no option to turn it off as well either. It's just like, yeah, I know.
There was, but then I didn't want to miss vital information. I didn't want to miss how to use a new piece of equipment. But I didn't want to be told how to kill enemies. But there is the expectation that you're going to read the tutorial, and the difficulty is adjusted that way. And I did find the difficulty of Doom Eternal very punishing. About halfway through, I had to turn it down to easy, which I never do in games. I finished Dark Souls. I play a lot of games on hard for the challenge, but I just wasn't enjoying Eternal as much.
So apart from like the Khan Maker fight where I actually used the Sentinel armor, and that's something I like. The game does not punish you for using that, and this is something you can use the cheats. If you find the cheats, the game does not punish you for anything. The only place you can't use the cheats is in the Sentinel gates or whatever they're called, where you get the keys to unlock the Unmaker, the last gun, and like game doesn't give a fuck, and that's something I can really appreciate. It's like, hey, if you want to use infinite ammo, just go ahead. It doesn't punish you in any way, and I'm like, I've completed the game now. If I want to go back and get the rest of the unlocks, I'll probably just use the cheats, just because it's like kind of fun to be like a rampaging murderer through the game. I had a point on something that I was going to bring up, and it's gone at my head. So I have another point because I know.
Quickly, I must have gone crazy on the blood punching. I feel I really remember it, and when people brought it up, I was like, surely that's in 2016. I just loaded up the game, and I cannot find what the fuck I'm talking about. So
yeah, there you go. You see, this is probably all blur into one. Yeah,
they're very similar games. They're like from a graphical standpoint, it's almost like, if you played them back to back, you'd be like, oh, it's pretty much the same engine.
If you know what I'm talking about, put it in the comments, please.
Or, it's a relic. I bet it's a relic.
I feel like there is something.
While he's going crazy over there, one other thing I do want to bring up that again is I really enjoyed. Was the level design in both games. I'm not gonna compare them on this because one is more linear and the exploration isn't as crazy. But Doom 2016 knows exactly what it is. It goes, you can be on Mars, you can be on Hell, and those levels they work well. Very, very cool. You go level to level to level to level, and it kind of flows. Doom Eternal does it differently. It is much more exploration based in a lot of the levels. There's a lot of firing out of things. I mean, let's be honest. The level where you get fire into the moon through the BFG gun is fucking awesome.
That's cool as fuck.
That is like, there are parts of that game.
Set pieces in games.
Yeah, and like the level design.
You can't just shoot a hole into Mars.
Yeah, it's like boosh.
Great title. It's like an Always Sunny episode title.
Yeah, and it's like, and the level design to me is fantastic in both games. Like, I don't have any. I mean, there are probably going to be there's the level where the underwater stuff I was on about with where you got like the toxic suits. Yeah, but generally speaking, I like the level design in both games. Doom Eternal has more locales that you go to. You go to the space station. You've got Earth. You've got Mars. You've got the moon. Like
the ship that you travel around in as well.
Yeah, all that stuff. You've got a lot of places. You go to like the Arctic at one point, and I like that. I like the fact that it was like, hey, just teleport to these different places. I'm totally cool with having a hub and doing that, because it was like, this is cool. And I think that whoever's making the level designs on both games, they just do a really fun job. All right, in the first game you got that weird like furnace one that we said was a little bit confusing, and in the second game you got like that horrible watery one. Other than that, I don't really have any complaints about the level design in either game. I think they work really well. I obviously have preferences to the levels I enjoyed the most. But at no point was I like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is annoying or frustrating. I never had that. And that's something I just want to.
I'm sure there was, and I will tell you what it was in a second. I mean, you've complained about this before.
Unless you mean Khan Maker, in which case no. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, but it's not limited to the Khan Maker fight. In the stages where there's more lava or damaging ground than floor. This is a first-person shooter. I have no peripherals. I can't see the lava to the immediate left or right of my feet. There was one particular part where you had to shoot these eyes while dodging around the lava, and the eyes didn't flash or anything when I was shooting them. So for a long time, I didn't actually know that. I'd come back to the game, so I didn't have that tutorial popping up, and I'd forgotten. But these eyes, when you shoot them, do not flash. You just have to keep shooting them. And it's like that thing where there's no health bar. You just have to trust that you're doing damage.
That weird boss fight.
I almost put the game down again there.
You mean that weird boss fight with the raising platforms in the lava? And there's like four. So
yeah.
This, to be honest, again, I'd already seen. I knew how to do the boss fight or mini boss or whatever it was. But stuff like that doesn't bother me because I'm so used to platformers. I was like, you can physically see the thing going up and down. Yeah, all right, there is a lot of lava there, and it is a bit frustrating if you fall into it. I'm not going to deny that, but it didn't bother me at all. A lot of the time there was lava. It was like usually a platforming section was like jump here, grab that, and then if there was time when you needed to look around, for the most part in the early game, it was like you could stand on a rock and you could be like, okay, I got to go in that direction. I didn't have a problem with that. The only reason that the biggest problem I have with Khan Maker is everything else on top of the fact that you can't stand anywhere.
It's the fact that you have to fight and platform it, because you can't. If you look down to your right, I could platform easily if there's no time pressure. Fighting and platforming.
Yeah.
It's strange that you say that it bothered you in the Khan Maker fight
because in that fight against like the judge or whatever he's called, and you have to take out those three things, they die really easily. I just got the ballista out and went bam, 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 take a couple shots. There are a couple of gargoyles that are being annoying, but there was some like fire pits, but like there was like 6 or 7 platforms in the lava. There was always like 3 raised it was always switching between like 3 different platforms. So it was like I literally got in position, would fire maybe 2 shots, and then I just jumped to the next platform. And again, that's just my own skill of being like, I've done this shit in other games before. I know how this works. But in the Khan Maker fight, this might have been a problem with the Switch version, because the visual indicator for that corruption stuff on the ground wasn't as obvious as it could be, and you don't realize until a little bit into the fight that the more times you hit her, the more it spreads. And so I had to get used to that. But the reason I didn't like that was because I'm now having to deal with being knocked off the platforms. Like, I'm constantly moving more than I feel like I should have to. I shouldn't, because the game wants me to stand still and shoot this person, but I've got 4 platforms I can stand on while I've got these drones shooting me while she's knocking me off the platforms. And it's just there's like the chaos, and then there's just too much chaos. Like, this is overwhelmingly not fun anymore because there's like 7 different things I've got to think about, and I've got a shooter, and I've got no ammo, and it's like.
Right, let's not go back to the Khan Maker too much, because we've settled this.
But I want to go to Jack basically on level design, because we've had our thing. What do you think about the level design in these games?
The locales were awesome. Like, all the different designs were really nicely done, and I guess you could say from a graphical standpoint, like, you could just like take a step back and just look at the world and be like, damn, that looks so damn cool. Like, very diverse as well, especially in Eternal. Like, as I say, you go from like Earth, and then you go into like Hell, and you go on a space station. Like, it was very awesome, like jaw-dropping, amazing. My only, I guess, gripes, if you will, were kind of some of the puzzle bits that they added in, which was a little bit unnecessary from my side. But, you know, I completely understand why they were there. And that's probably just my, you know, preference, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, then, Greg. I'm pretty sure you got other stuff. So, like, hit me with.
I mean, I'll chime in on the presentation, because other than the lava thing, I didn't really talk about the presentation, which is just, you know, because for all the bad things I say about Eternal, these are the gripes and these are the discussions, but I still think it was a great game. And the presentation, obviously, it's not really a design thing, which is what I'm interested in. But, you know, you cannot fault the presentation in Eternal, the set pieces, the giant statues. But sorry, you want more gripes?
Yeah. I was going to say, hit me with the next thing, because I know you've got a list of things anyway. I've got one other thing I want to talk about. But yeah, okay. Well, let's hit me with the first one.
Really, the second one's not a complaint. That's sound. All right. I wanted something to be effusively happy about, which is the sound. Let's spoil that now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, because we're getting to set pieces and all of that.
I know what this is. I can't wait, because I.
Did you guess right? Is it story?
Oh, I thought you were going to go on about arena fights.
No.
Okay.
No, I love arena fights.
Interesting.
Story. And this is something that Jack brought up earlier, which is, you said rather than puzzles, you would rather have bits of story, bits of cutscene. I loved the presentation of the story in 2016. From the very opening moments, they show you who Doom Guy is without telling. He is video game character. He is the player incorporated. You know, gamers out there will know the term ludonarrative dissonance.
Oh no!
Brief introduction. It's when the GTA, the player's out there murdering as a mass murderer, and then you go into a cutscene and it's an episode of fucking Soprano. You know, there's a disconnect, and there's no disconnect in Doom. You know, you punch demons and you flip people off, and then in the cutscenes, Doom Guy punches through monitors and tells what's his face, Robot Man,
Samuel.
Boss Man,
Aiden,
to go fuck himself. Exactly, just what I said, Robot Boss Man, to go fuck himself. and that is exactly how it should be. I have no complaints with 2016, other than the fact that it was clearly under budgeted and the ending was just cut really short, and it left us with this wonderful cliffhanger. So where's that cliffhanger going to take us? We all anticipated. We sat there for years waiting to see where that would take us. And Doom Eternal starts, and you're on a mothership, and it feels like read the tie-in comics and books to find out what happened between parts 1 and 2. And it's like, okay, I'll go along with this, because I don't really care about the story, right? You know, it's not that important. So I just go along with it. And it's like, the con makers of this very important group. The Doom Guy is actually a very important. He's the Doom Slayer. He's went to these places, and you come to the king, and he kneels, and it's very serious. And there are all these fantasy names. Do you want a lore entry? Here are all these lore entries about how important the story is. Fuck you! Like be Doom Guy from the first game. Remember the guy that, like, someone gave him a lore piece, and he'd be like, "Fuck out of my face! I'm gonna shoot you. Kill demons." What happened to that? Why are you trying to make a fantasy novel? Why are you trying to sell me tie-in books?
Jack, I'll let you go first on this.
That's all.
Not much to say, really.
Okay.
On that one.
All right.
I enjoyed the story for both of them. I took them I played them in reverse anyway, so, you know, I didn't take it the same way. And to be fair, Doom Eternal was my first entry into the Doom series. So I would have taken it more objectively at the fact that I took it at face value rather than as a whole series. So I can't really agree or disagree, because I didn't have the context when I played the game.
Yeah.
I just played the game and enjoyed the story for what it was, and I'm like, oh, this is fucking awesome. He's a badass. Everyone's a badass. You know, you're just going around killing demons. And whilst I think in hindsight that a Khan Maker story isn't that great, it's still cool. Still a demon at the end of the day. You're talking about, like, killing demons and killing essentially what essentially is like God or a goddess or whatever. I thought that was pretty cool. And then obviously Ancient Gods Part 1 and 2, pretty damn cool as well. Like, I think it ramps up a lot.
Obviously, I can't
Story,
speak. I can't speak to the. I know the story of the DLC. I've just not played through it. I watched the speed run of it actually recently. So I like what they do in 2016 with Doom Guy basically being like, I don't give a fuck about this shit. There are a couple times that the game will put you in a point where you can't move or you can't get away from it. Most of the time, it kind of tells you on the fly with like Vega and Samuel being in your ear, which I think is good. And I like the lore entries being like in both games where it's like if you find the lore, it is all in those entries, all those log entries. You can go and read it whenever you want. You don't have to. In the first game, you obviously get the demon guy, who you get those audio logs, which are pretty cool. But you can still run around while that's going on, I think. But having played the first game, and something I really liked was I really liked Samuel Hayden. You have this big betrayal at the end of the game. And, he's in your ear in the second one and stuff. And
not really a betrayal, though, is it?
No, I mean, it's obvious.
Never really on the same side.
I mean, my absolute favorite, like, story moment in Doom 2016 is where he's like, you've got those 4 containers that you need to like uncouple. Doom Guy's like looking at him and he's like kicks one, and then you get to the last one and he's like, you don't know what you're doing, and he just smashes it and he's like, oh my god. And he says he loses his shit with him. He's just like, you've just caused all this like time and energy put into this thing and you just completely annihilated it. And then in the, you get in the second game, you've got Vega with you again, you've got Hayden with you, and I like that like Hayden's kind of telling you the story for the most part. But something that I actually did appreciate was if you were going down like the bit before you get to the gladiator boss fight, I think you're going down a lift, and rather than show you the lift, you get this cutscene of Doom Guy being dragged down the lift and like in front of this guy, and you get a few cutscenes, but they never interfere with the story. They're always at points where usually you'd be waiting. Not every time, but there are a couple times. And I'm like, do you know what? I'm okay with that, because it meant when the cutscene ended, I'm off the lift. I would have had to wait on this lift for ages, and I just go. And it kind of fades back in. And yeah, there are a couple times where you see this happen and where you do lose control of the game. And that's, in a first-person shooter like Doom, you don't necessarily want that. But the story never got in the way. I enjoyed it. I mean, I couldn't give a fuck about the Khan Maker side of it. A lot of the time, it's like, oh, she's trying to siphon her. But like when you meet like the guy that's like another Doom Slayer, who's like gives you the thing. Like I forgot what his name is, but he's like the Fallen One or something. He's like another Praetorian dude like you.
Man person.
Hey? Man person, yeah. And
that one.
And the priests, they were pretty funny. Like, none of the story elements ever impacted the flow of the game for me personally. I didn't have a problem with it, and if they wanted to add more story, I think they did it in a fun way. And the bit where it's like, you're not gonna blow a hole in the moon with the BFG, you just fucking fire yourself out of it. Like, there were funny moments in there, and I think that really enhanced the story, the gameplay with these moments. Is it a memorable story? Not really. Like, I think the expansion packs probably have more of a memorable story because of what they're setting up and what they're on about. But like, it was fun. It's like an action film, like basically what Doom is. It's like an action film with this like story no one cares about. They just want to see all the ripping and tearing, but it added to it.
Did you actually understand the story of Eternal without going into all the logs and reading anything? Because I didn't, and I had after a certain point had no inclination to. Whereas 2016, I just understood it.
Yeah. It's basically hell is now on Earth because these car makers are trying to absorb energy without destroying their own planet, and then they're trying to rise the icon of sin. I can't remember the exact reason for that, but like, your whole thing is like, oh, I need to stop the invasion of Earth. And then once you do that, you're like, oh, I need to go and deal with this Khan Maker who keeps summoning shit and like trying to destroy our planet. And that's what Doom Guy's doing. And along the way, you find out his history of being like, he was a dude who was brought to this planet, he was trained. And that's kind of what the Berserkers are, the Marauders are about. They're kind of like, hey, he used to be one of us, and they're trying to stop him. Because he's going against...
I don't shit on it anymore.
No, I'd say he's just going against what he was technically designed for. And he's the whole thing with Doom Guy, or Doom Marine, Doom Slayer, whatever you want to call him, is that he's like the protector of Earth. He doesn't give a fuck about doing it peacefully. That's not his job. He's like, there's demons, I need to kill demons. And you do get a little bit of dialogue from him, which I will admit was weird. I don't think he's ever spoken in a game up until this point. But
in 3 he does.
Oh, he does in 3, does he?
Apparently, I've not played it.
Okay.
I know he does.
But I like the occasional lines that he said. It wasn't a lot. And now I know I've seen the final boss fight of Ancient Gods Part 2, and he says something he has a really good like one-word answer right at the end of the final boss fight, and I'm like, that's all he needed to say. But like, yeah, I don't think the story was detrimental in either game. Like it was just there, and to me it was like an action film kind of thing.
It certainly in Eternal didn't hurt my enjoyment of the game because you can't ignore it. It just I was just like, what is this? What is this lore? Stop making up names. Stop it.
It's just excuses to go and fight bigger and badder enemies and different planets and stuff, and that's good enough. That's good enough for me. Yeah. Did you want to, like, you said something about sound as well? Do you want to bring that up?
Sure. Let's go into the one thing that I have literally no complaints about. That is sound. Whoever is making sound in these games, you are doing everything perfect,
including music.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm a bit of a metalhead, so this is the soundtrack to Doom. This is the soundtrack to death and murder on a massive scale. It absolutely fits the game. There is nothing I would change. I still listen to BFG Division. In Eternal, that they just upped it even more.
Yeah,
there's even more good tracks in Eternal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the sound design from start to finish is good. Like the sound of all the weapons, the enemy cries, everything. Like the soundtrack I really like. But the one thing that they do very well in both games is each piece of music is designed to loop differently depending on how quickly you get to like a next fight. Because there are times where the music kicks in, you're in a fight, kicks in, and it starts to fade out, and you get more like a kind of like building. You're like, oh, there's more shit coming. But you can just stand there and listen to that build up as long as you want. And as soon as you get to that thing, because like especially the Icon of Sin level is fantastic for this, the music never stops. It's just constantly like that. And you get to some crazy set pieces in that. There's some real hard bits. And it's just there the entire time. But coupled with the sound design is like the sniper shot, the sound of the plasma gun is one of my favorites. Like really fast firing that. All in all, like I can't fault that as well. And I assume, Jack, you're pretty much the same, especially with the sound.
I think it's the voice acting that really gets me. Whether it's the voice acting itself or the kind of effects they put on there. But when Vega and Hayden talk, and when you get the bits of where about the demon talk as well, fucking hell, man. It just like, it's impactful. Like you remember the talking in the game so much. For me anyway, personally, I just think it's amazing. Like, damn, like literally chills. Yeah. Literally nerd chills I get when fucking demons talk, and I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah. Oh, he means business.
Oh shit.
Hayden, the voice actor, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, really is. Like, he just amazing.
He's unintentionally funny because of what you do. Like his reactions to what you do. Like it's more so in 2016, but in Eternal, he's kind of accepted the fact that he's basically dead, and you upload it into this like machine, and he's just like, yeah, go fuck him up. Like, it's like, I really like appreciate.
Buy the tie-in novel to find out how Samuel Hayden died.
No, I don't know. Is there a tie-in novel?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I'm pretty sure they're starting to come out. They're like, that's what they do now. This is the problem with being successful, is that they start to do this shit. Let's not go into a tangent about World of Warcraft, because that's a big thing right now. It's like, you can't understand the story without reading all the books and novels and comics.
I don't think they'll do that with Doom. Like, I don't even know where they go with Doom here. I'm just like, give me another game.
They already did it, man. Even before 2016 came out, there was a Doom novel.
I need to buy it then. I've pretty much exhausted my list of things. I think we've covered pretty much everything that I like and dislike. Yeah. Start with you, Jack. Have you got anything else you want to bring up and talk about?
Yeah, okay, let's just go with my closing thoughts and my overall summary of this. Honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed both games. I think there's a lot of great things to take away from both games, and whilst there are a few things that we've said are negatives, I think overall as a game objectively, they are absolutely incredible. I do prefer Doom Eternal over Doom 2016, partly down to the movement, the kind of fatalities that you get, some of the extra weapons, the swords and the Blood Fist. And the big one for me is the dash introduction. But sound design, level design, graphically incredible, just a really strong game, and just fast-paced action.
Great.
I loved Doom 2016, probably my favorite FPS of all time. Eternal, it felt like two steps forward. There's so many great improvements over the first game. and then they took the pistol and then they shot themselves repeatedly in the foot for no reasons that I can comprehend in a few areas. It's just things with the prescriptivism, and it's like there are things that they could just remove that would just make the game better, in my opinion. Like, for example, take out the tutorials and to compensate, turn the difficulty down a bit so that you can just let the player be creative and then they can learn by themselves. Because that's what we want to do at the end of the day with video games, right? We want to mess around and have fun, and we want to, when we discover that we can pop the enemy's head off, we want to go, oh, holy shit, I didn't know you could do that. And then, that's a fun moment. Eternal takes those moments away from you for no reason that I can really... well, there are arguments, but by the time I got to the end of Eternal, I was almost doing a 180. Because things like the flame belch, I'd sort of learned to master, and I was like, okay, I can get into the flow of this. But obviously I've gone into all the things I didn't like over Eternal, and I think if they come out with another game, I'm very interested to see who wins out, because there's clearly a battle of ideologies going on right now. And I don't know if it's because Marty Stratton, in the first game, you've got two co-creative directors. You've got Marty Stratton and Hugo Martin. In the second game, it's just Hugo Martin and Marty Stratton become executive. I don't know if that's what happened. And then Hugo Martin said, we're going to do things my way. And players, you're going to have fun my way. And if you don't have fun the correct way, we're going to go back and put you in the re-education training school until you're ready to have fun. And that's really it. But I will say, even then, I still think Doom Eternal was a great.
Yeah, so I think these games need to be played in order, right? They're both hard games for what they are. If you're not used to this type of FPS, you're going to get your ass handed to you. If you are going to play them, play 2016 first, and then play Doom Eternal. Mainly because Doom Eternal is harder. They give you less ammo on your guns. They give you it just ramps up faster. And, I love both these games. I said I've played the worst versions of them. I played them on Switch, and I still had a fucking incredible time with them, right? And that says a lot, right? Like, that's how good scalable these games are and how fun they are. That's on, a low-powered console. If you're going to buy them on PC, play the game at 60 frames. You will get a significantly more better experience out of it. But when it comes to the games, 2016 is one of the best introductories into Doom, right? Don't play the original Doom, because that game is old. But, Doom 2016 does a lot of things right. It's like, hey, we want to make this fast. We want to make this, aggressive combat. And we want you to go from level to level, finding new guns, finding new abilities, upgrading those guns. And all right, the boss fights suck. But other than that, the game, easy 10 out of 10, right, to me. Eternal is for somebody who wants a harder experience and a slightly different experience. If I'm honest, there is a lot more platforming. There's a lot more exploration. There's a shit more upgrades in that game. There are reworked enemies. There are new enemies. There are a lot of things that they throw at you, and the controller, I don't have one right in front of me. Oh, I do, I lie. This controller, right? Every single button on here does something in combat, and that's something that, this is why I call it the thinking man's game, right? You have to remember that everything does something, whether that's dashing or jumping or punching or burning or whatever it is, right? There is so much to think about, and when you get into that flow state in Eternal, where everything is cranked up, and especially in late game, there is nothing like it. There is nothing like it, and I think that's why I prefer it. Not because 2016 is a bad game, because it isn't. It's a fantastic game, 10 out of 10. Doom Eternal is also a 10 out of 10 for me, despite the fact that the boss fights suck in both games, and these guys don't know how to make good boss fights apart from one. The core combat, when you're fighting the demons, whether that's in corridors, big open arenas, little arenas, horizontal, vertical arenas, no matter where you're fighting demons, the variety, the guns you have, the upgrades you can get, the choices that you get to make when it comes to the weapons that you use and which mods you use and the relic choices and the other upgrades. Yeah, there is a bit much of it, but you go from being a badass to more of a badass to more of a badass, and that for me was, hey, I don't feel weak at any point in this game. I feel like, yeah, the combat can get out of control, but I can always do it. So it's all pretty good. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. It's I think you need to play both games, and if you don't want as an extreme game, play 2016, and then see how you feel after that. If you are ready for a game that is really going to kick your ass, not that 2016 won't, but Eternal is much, much harder in my opinion. So that's how I feel about them.
Well, that about do it for us, folks. So thank you all so very much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this session. We've been Gamers Gambit. I'll leave you with an outro for both Greg and Killjoy. If you guys would like to let the folks at home know where they can find you, starting with our guest today, Greg.
Oh God, I wasn't ready for this. So I'm Egregious Games. You can find me at egregiousgames.com. I'm also on Twitter at egregiousgamesg, or just search YouTube for Egregious Game. That's where I mainly am. That's where I post stuff, and we're going to be having a new video about combat systems very soon. Over to you, Levi.
Yeah, I mean, if you've watched any of this stuff, you know where I live. I live over the Engineering Bay on YouTube. Do a lot more retro content. I do a lot of opinion-based content. Plenty of other shows and stuff. And hey, it's going along nicely. Very happy with that. I do have a Twitter and a Facebook, so just check out at the Engineering Bay on Twitter and at the Engineering Bay on Facebook if you want to get involved over there. And hopefully see some of you guys soon.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And yeah, or the link to the description. Sorry, the link to their channels will be in the description below. Get it right. And yeah, please do let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And as always, until the next time, peace.